Hi, this is Sailaja Menon. Let us talk about anger today. How much is too much anger? Isn't this a daunting question that comes up in all our minds when we start realizing that our friendships are drifting apart, they are starting to ignore us, we start noticing that our loved ones, our significant other is emotionally disconnected and numb towards us, or for that matter, even at work, when we start seeing that we seem to be very isolated and no one really seems to be friendly towards us. When we see these things, it truly bothers us. This is a question to really sit and ponder as to what is happening in the way we are really demonstrating our anger or displaying our anger. Let me first of all tell you, anger is a very normal, healthy, and a natural response. It's an emotion that is very healthy. However, what happens is that most oftentimes we tend to display anger in a manner that results in very unhealthy outcomes. And I think that is the most concern with all of us, which makes us sit back and question, how much is too much anger? Let's take a few minutes and talk about how anger really evolves. Anger is a two-step process. So when I say two-step process, what I'm talking about is the first step is the actual pain. The pain can be emotional or it can be physical. Physical can be something like headaches, stomach pain, all other kinds of symptoms that we experience on a day-to-day basis. When it comes to emotional pain, or emotional pain that we talk about, we are talking about truly a sense of feeling rejected or grief or ignored. These are your emotional pain. So when we look at the pain that I'm talking about, which is emotional and physical, the other step or the second step is the trigger points. How are we really interpreting this emotional and physical pain? In the sense, our interpretation, our assumption, and how we are really basically displaying that pain that we are experiencing. So it's a two-part process that we are talking about. So there is pain and there is this trigger points or the triggers in terms of how we are interpreting this pain. Now, when we look at these two parts, individually, they really don't cause much problems or much concerns at all, leaving them alone. For example, we could feel a certain emotion, we could feel a certain physical pain and not really react to it. Or we might tend to talk about it very healthily in an assertive way and really settle the matter. But the problem arises when the trigger kind of gets in, which is we get into an assumption, we get into an interpretation. And that is when all hell breaks loose and the anger is totally out of control. A good example would be, let's say, you go back home with a headache and you're sitting in your living room really with a severe headache. Your little one comes up to you and starts really kind of playing with you and starts pushing you, and here you are not in that element to kind of interact with your child. Now your pain is a physical pain. Now if you just remain with the physical pain and engage with your child, you're going to be just fine. But let's say you have a trigger added onto it where you start looking at it as to how can't she understand that I'm having a headache and I am really in pain and I'm not in a position to kind of play. You yell or you scream or you kind of push your child away and you see your child looking at you in such a freeze. So what is happening here is it's a trigger that kind of really takes you on to the next step of actually losing your control. Another example, just for you to keep it at the back of your head, would be you could imagine the pain to be a can of gasoline and you could look at your trigger as a matchstick. So what happens? The whole thing kind of blows out of control. So this is what is anger. How you manage anger is how you also manage the two-step process. Okay, so to go back to how much is too much anger, let's talk about how we have been used to using anger in our day-to-day life. We all tend to rely on anger because it has 5 major payoffs. And I'm going to talk to you all about what those 5 payoffs are. Now, anger can very, very nicely manage stress. So when we are stressed sometimes, we don't really deal with what is stressing us. We tend to get angry. We tend to get irritable. We tend to get edgy, and we kind of relate and kind of, interpret our stresses through anger. Anger also has a beautiful way to hide our emotional pain. We all sometimes are so shameful or guilty or feeling bad about something we did. And how do we hide that emotional pain? Through anger. The third thing is anger has the ability to get attention from people. So how does that happen? Now, when we get angry, we sometimes yell, we scream. And when we yell and scream, we automatically see people really getting our attention, isn't it? They react to us because when we yell, when we scream, it has a way of getting the attention of a person. So we rely on anger to also get attention of people. We use anger sometimes to change somebody or change someone we love. We use anger in a manner where we get the desired favorable response from our loved ones, from our significant other, from our friends, by actually getting a bit sour-faced or kind of really putting a tantrum with them. We do get the results that we are looking for from our loved ones. The last but not least is we use anger to get back at somebody. Revenge, vengeance. If we want to get back at someone, we use anger to get back. So that can be from a very revengeful vengeance mode. So anger has all of these payoffs that I listed out. And I think in short term, we always get those paid off because people give us a reaction that we are looking for. But the problem with anger payoffs is that on a long term, people get to become very tired of your style of anger payoffs, that they really catch up with you and they realize this is not something I can really put up with. And they start to retaliate, they start to pull back, they start to drift off, they start to disconnect. So this is when you start realizing your anger has truly reached that optimum level and you need to do something about it. So it goes back to the question, how much is too much anger? This is it. This is too much anger. So as human beings, I think we need to first of all accept that anger is a normal response. No one is stopping you from being angry. It's a healthy response. It's a natural emotion which all of us as human beings would experience at some point in our life. It is how we respond to that anger that matters. Be assertive about how you want to kind of share what you feel. The emotion that you are experiencing, the pain that you are experiencing is something that needs to be heard. Talk about it. Talk about it with respect. Talk about it with regard. Talk about it assertively in terms of how you feel. Use I statements when you talk about your anger. I feel this way when you say this to me. So you are expressing to them how you feel rather than yelling and screaming and shoving or kind of using any form of derogatory ways of how you express your anger. So make a point to express the anger, but express it in an agreeable and an acceptable way. If you're still being challenged by your anger and you feel your anger has been truly out of control and this is something that you've been carrying forward for a very, very long time, all your life, and you have been thinking about it and you have been wondering how much is too much and you've just not been able to fix it, please call a psychologist and make an appointment, and I'm sure he or she will be able to fix it for you with some coping strategies.